Miami got a Sunday win in their second preseason game, and we got a chance to see their projected starting lineup in action. We give you our takeaways on Terry Rozier, Tyler Herro, and more in this episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day, and the best way to support the show is to leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app and join more than 14,000 Locked On Heat lifers by subscribing on YouTube. A reminder that you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Recording this on Monday morning after we got our first look at the Heat's new starting lineup in their preseason win over the Pelicans. Never saw those 5 guys on the floor at all last year, David. Terry Rozier, Tyler Herro, Jimmy Butler, Nikola Jovic, and Bam. Never got a chance to see them for a single minute. We saw them together for the first time in Miami's second preseason game. That's because Tyler Herro was out for the preseason opener with a groin strain. Jaime Jaquez Jr. also made his return to the lineup after he came back from a groin strain in this game. So we're going to get into kind of the players who stood out the most. But this was, like I said, the first look that we've gotten at this group. They outscored the Pelicans by 2 in their 14 first-half minutes. Didn't play in the second half. But, David, what did you like the most from the new starting lineup?
I like their shot selection. I liked a lot of the actions that they ran in order to get wide open threes. They finished the game with 42 three-point attempts, and I think if that's going to be the consistent norm for this team, it's not a bad place for them to be in. And in fact, I think it's a rather good one. Like, I think they were trying to incorporate these guys in a way where they wouldn't get into each other's space or step on each other's toes and try to figure out the best balance on offense. But it seemed, at least while the score didn't necessarily reflect it because it was just a really bad shooting day for Miami, I think a lot of the actions were decisive, to not to quote Spo too directly, but there was a lot of intent and purpose in what they were doing on offense, not a lot of standing around, a lot of screens by a number of players there in order to get other looks and be able to attack the basket and maybe kick out to a wide open shooter. So the offense to me, I think looked much more smooth, at least from what we saw in the first half, based on what we saw last season for sure, where it was really clunky and bogged down. And there were a number of possessions almost every game where you were like, just do something, make something happen. And that wasn't the case on Sunday. And it's a good Pelicans team. So they had all their starters out there. They had their whole lineup. They're a playoff contender in a lot of people's view. And I think and Miami was able to do a pretty good job of holding their own and match their athleticism, physicality, and also be able to set the pace for the game too, which is something that they did not do very often last year.
Yeah, no Trey Murphy from New Orleans, but other than that, no Brandon Ingram. But you're right. It's a good Pelicans team, but you mentioned the 42 three-pointers, but the fact that the Heat didn't have a good shooting night, and honestly, I didn't even notice that. They went 9 for 42 from three-point range in the game, and I didn't even notice that during watching the game. Look, this is preseason. I don't care if the shots go in necessarily. I just want to see the process of things. And to me, that's why I didn't notice it. I'm like, wow, these are some really good looks. And I actually thought they passed up some three-pointers in this game, especially in the first half. But they were passing them up to get to the basket. They were not passing them up for those mid-range shots, right? It was not – I literally saw maybe 1 or 2 where somebody dribbled out of a three-pointer and then ended up having to settle for a mid-range shot. And I think one of them was by Terry Rozier with like 5 seconds left on the shot clock, and then they rebounded their own miss. And then I think Tyler Herro had one. But – only 2 of the 25 shots that the Heat put up with the starting 5 on the floor were non-paint 2-pointers. That was basically everything that the starting lineup took last year. Everything was a non-paint 2-pointer, it felt like, or the Bam Adebayo free throw line jumper and all that kind of stuff. Only 2 of the 25 shots that the starting group took were those inefficient non-paint 2s that the Heat are trying so hard to basically remove from the offense, right? We know the story in training camp, Eric Spoelstra, those non-paint 2s, those long 2s, those are going to be worth 1 point in the Bahamas. Everything at the basket is worth 3, and the three-pointers are worth 3. And I pointed this out after the Charlotte game too, but I think a lot of us are sort of we're losing the plot a little bit on what the Heat need to do offensively. They were right. They were in the middle of the pack in terms of 3-point shooting volume and efficiency last year. This is not a bad 3-point shooting team. It's not they were not at the bottom of the league in terms of volume. And it feels like every time I watch the broadcast or I'm reading it or the line of questioning that Eric Spoelstra gets after these games is, how do you get up more threes? How do you get more threes? How do you get up more threes? And to me, and look, they do need to get up more threes, and that's obviously been a priority. But what they really need to do is get to the rim more, because that's where they were they were 28th in the league last year in shots at the rim and in points at the rim. That's where they really needed to get better. And I thought in this game, they got a lot of those. I was really impressed with Terry Rozier, Tyler Herro, Jimmy Butler, like some of the drives that they made. Even Nikola Jovic had a couple of drives to the basket. Bam is doing more of it. Like everybody is. And all of it's related, right? Like this team, you could see them, like you were talking about before. They're spaced out. They're screening for each other. They're moving. It's drive, kick, screen here, do that. All of it is generating the looks that they're trying to get. And so, yeah, the shot selection in these first two games has been night and day from what we got last year.
And all this while they're still being able to maintain their defensive intensity too. Like that was really obvious. I think New Orleans just wasn't prepared for Miami's level of effort, and you could see that on a number of places. Yeah, there were a number. Maybe it was a case of South Beach flu. You never know. They probably got in the Saturday before. Who knows how late they were out that day, and it was an early afternoon game. So there's always going to be some rust when these mid-afternoon games take place.
That's why I'm feeling so bad this morning. I got the New Orleans Pelicans flu, whatever they brought to town.
But Miami looks really sharp defensively. They forced a number of turnovers. Tyler had a number of big plays. I think Nico did a pretty good job of switching on when it called to do so. He moved his feet well. I liked his overall defensive intensity. Jimmy and Bam, of course, as good as ever.
They had Nico guarding Zion to start that game. We got that look. I thought later on, I liked the 2 or 3 minute stretch where they had Haywood Highsmith in Jovic's place. In that it was like from the 7-minute mark to the 4-minute mark or something like that in the second quarter. And so we basically got maybe the plan B starting lineup if the Nikola Jovic thing doesn't work out. Jovic didn't have a great shooting game. That one was obvious. He made like a 3-pointer and like kind of raised his hands to the skies.
Yeah,
and
like finally. Because he had 2 wide open ones before, and I was watching those, and I was like, man, I was watching the game and thinking to myself, damn, Nico, you've got to hit those. Like that's how you cement that. But I think he's putting a little pressure on himself, and you can tell that. The third one, it was kind of a release there. It's like, oh, finally, I got the shot that I wanted and I hit it. But he has to hit those more consistently. I mean,
he was telling Tobin after the game too. I mean, and he posted this on his Instagram, but like he is being really hard on himself. Like Tobin was asking him about the game, and you could just see like, I got to make these shots, man. That's all he was talking about. It's like, I got to make the open ones, and he knows like that's how he keeps that job, is making those shots.
Is he at a point now where you think his job is in question? Because I think, again, we talked about Spo's lackluster support at the start of the training camp, said that he hadn't done anything really to lose the job, not necessarily earn it either. But now that after a couple of preseason games where his shot hasn't been as consistent as it was last year, and you can tell that there's some pressure there, do you think that Spo looks at Haywood and says, you know what, I like his drives to the basket, I like his overall defensive intensity, and we don't lose much? Obviously, you're going to lose size anyway, but Miami's already going to be undersized regardless. Do you think that they're going to make that change at some point?
I don't know. I would say that he hasn't done enough to make me feel like he's in Sharpie in that starting lineup. I think
that's fair.
But nobody else has really come for it. So this is like our first real look at Jaime coming back from the groin. Haywood played a little bit with that group. I do wonder, because Spoelstra did go back with like the mostly, for the most part, the platoon system of, I want my starting 5 out there as many minutes as I can. They're going to basically all come off the floor. Then I'll play some backups, and then I'm going to get more of the starting 5 together. I do wonder if he starts experimenting a little bit more, like I said, excuse me, a little bit more, where he did like those 3 minutes with Haywood Highsmith in there. Like, do we see that a little bit more, and somebody else can start coming for Nico's job? I don't know. There's more preseason games left here, and maybe Spo can be a little bit more experimental with some of these units. Going back to the defensive point, because I didn't want to lose this, and you brought it up before. 5 steals from the starters. 30 total fast break points in this game from Miami.
Yeah.
And another immense shift from last year. Last year, again, they didn't force a ton of fast break points, and we always think about this Miami Heat team as a team that gets a lot of steals and generates offense that way. Not last year. They barely did it in this game. And I thought actually in the Charlotte game too, a lot more aggressiveness, kind of jumping those passing lanes, getting those steals, things like that. Tyler Herro had a couple of really nice ones. Terry Rozier was involved defensively. I liked all that. Nikola Jovic, like you mentioned. So there's a lot more to take away from this game. But I do want to specifically kind of drill down into the Tyler Herro, Terry Rozier relationship, because that was the big thing that Eric Spoelstra wanted to see more of before making a decision with that backcourt is, hey, let's get those two guys out there together and see if they can figure out a way to play with each other. And I think a lot of people understandably were a little dubious if that was going to work. But Eric Spoelstra this entire time, basically since trading for Rozier in January, has maintained the position, at least publicly. He thinks it can work. There's a lot that I liked. I think there was a little bit more that we need to see more of. We'll talk about what that is exactly next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season or continue starting the season with a big return over at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and there's so many reasons. Last Sunday, or this past Sunday, not a great slate of games, a number of blowouts. Well, I guess it depends on what side of the equation you're on. If you're one of your teams was one of the ones that got those blowout wins, you think it's wonderful. But I think overall it was kind of a lackluster game. But guess what? A lackluster weekend. But you know what? That's okay. You can still go on there and check out so many different things. Let's say you're watching a game and it is a little bit of a blowout. You want to go somewhere else. You maybe get a hunch in the middle of the game, or you want to watch live play-by-play from some other game that's taking place. Well, there's all that and much, much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. And best of all, you get started now with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right. Just a $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets, but only if you go visit FanDuel.com to get started today. That's FanDuel.com. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. We want to invite you to join the exclusive Locked On Heat Insider community. If you want to join, there's a link in the show notes on YouTube and in your podcast description. If you join, you're going to get a bunch of cool stuff. You're going to get exclusive content, insider info from me and David's reporting on the ground, game notes, stats while we're covering these games live, intel on moves and trades that could happen before the trade deadline, observations that we're not posting on Twitter or anything else, or even getting a chance to talk about on this show sometimes because we run out of time and we got other things that we got to talk about. Best of all, you get the chance to talk to us one-on-one through the subtext messaging platform. This is the best way to be a Locked On Heat lifer. So if you want to join, you can sign up with the link in the show notes. It's free for 14 days. After that, it goes to $4.99 a month. No worries. You can cancel at any time if it's not what you want to do. But we are really excited for this chance to connect with you all. We really hope you give it a shot. Tyler Herro and Terry Rozier. First look at that group together here with this starting five. Tyler Herro goes 4 of 9 for 12 points, 2 of 6 from three-point range, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. Terry Rozier finished with 11 points on 5 of 9 shooting, 2 assists, and 2 rebounds, and 1 steal. Both of them basically played 15, 16 minutes. They didn't play in the second half. So I thought really productive on their own, right? I read the stats, very productive. But I also thought I don't know that they helped each other necessarily, but they didn't get in each other's way. And I think that's really the job for Tyler Herro and Terry Rozier, is for both of them to be productive. This team needs to score more points, and they can't just rely on Jimmy and Bam to do those things. They need to be productive. They need to hang points on the board. How they do it is very important too. Tyler Herro embracing the off the ball or shooting off the catch a little bit more. Terry Rozier talking after the game about how he keeps using the word quarterback. That's what he wants to do for that team. I think we need to see a little bit more of them together, obviously, before we make any conclusions. But my main takeaway from seeing them here in this game was they just stayed out of each other's way, and they were both able to do what it is that they had to do. And that to me was the main job.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording, and the way I perceived it was, one of them would lead the offense, the other one would lead the offense, and they would kind of switch off, and that's perfectly fine. Like, I think for now, that's okay, but you want a little bit more chemistry between the two. And then, to your point, I don't think we got a chance to see that in really their first action together on Sunday in a limited amount of playing time. So you hope that it's something they can continue working on. They'll shoot around tomorrow before the San Antonio Spurs game on Tuesday. Maybe they'll shoot on Wednesday before the Hawks come into town. That's the makeup game for last week that was canceled due to Hurricane Milton. So there'll be back-to-back games for Miami. I don't know how much playing they'll be doing during those two games, but I would imagine on Tuesday, at the very least, they'll probably get more of an opportunity, especially if Tyler can remain healthy. But I think it's a good point. They didn't get in each other's way, and that's you know what? That could just be enough. Like if they can still be productive and put up the points and still make plays for others, and I think they both did, that's a pretty good start for this unit. And moreover, I think if you look at this backcourt and what they were doing going into the preseason, I think most people's concerns wasn't whether or not they could find a way to score, be productive, or whatever your personal feelings might be about each player, but that they were able to kind of hold their own defensively. Like I liked a lot of the defensive pressure that they were able to put. Terry and Tyler both were able to switch. They were able to kind of use their speed to anticipate passing lanes. I thought they did a pretty good job overall. Like maybe they're not defensive juggernauts in either one of them, but as long as they can play good defense overall, and I think the team played really good defense overall, that's exactly what you want out of this backcourt. You know, if they can make plays for other, find ways to score consistently, and still play solid defense within the team's overall defensive scheme, that's a home run for this team. And I think that's exactly what you were looking for or hoping for on the positive end of the spectrum.
It's a great point. There's obviously going to be questions about what it is that they could do offensively, but that's more related to them as individual players, right? Like Tyler Herro, is he going to actually embrace more off the catch, be more efficient? Terry Rozier, can he be the point guard that this team needs? Those are still fair questions. The concern about playing them together with the starting five is, can they survive defensively? Well, just like you said, they looked like it against the Pelicans. Again, not the Pelicans' best performance in this game, but the Heat had a 93.9 defensive rating when Tyler Herro was on the court, which is awesome, and a 91.2 defensive rating when Terry Rozier was on the court. So, it helps when you obviously have Bam and Jimmy next to you. But that's the deal, right? Like that's the point here. That's why you have them together in that starting five is how can we maximize the group? How can we optimize the roster that we have? And I thought, for the record, Terry Rozier in both preseason games, I think he's been very good defensively. I really like the activity. I like the way that he's chasing guys coming off those screens. He's on guys' hips. He's swinging at the ball. You could tell for him and Tyler, by the way, both of them have been instructed. Listen, like, the worst thing that can happen for players with their size and their inherent physical limitations is being on an island for a long time. If they're getting on and on, if somebody's just going to size them up on a switch or something like that, and you've got, like we saw in the playoffs last year, Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum just dribbling it 5, 6, 7 times and taking you into the post, worst case scenario for these guys. But if you can limit the amount of time that you're under stress defensively, then that helps, right? Because you're not on an island. You're not as exposed. And one way to do that is just to end the offensive possession for the opponent with a steal, with a turnover. And both of them are just knocking at that ball. And I thought Tyler Herro had 2 steals in this game, jumping the passing lanes, but also had like this great deflection where he knocked Daniel Tice to the floor and walked away, did not help him up. Old school Miami Heat move. Yes. And you could tell Daniel Tice was very upset about that. And Tyler Herro just looked down on him, and he's like, oh yeah.
I didn't notice that. The Tice was kind of writhing on the floor a little bit, and my first was like, oh, what a flop. That was ridiculous. Like Tyler,
but then you saw the replay. He knocked him over. Daniel Tice was like going up for that loose ball. I thought he knocked him over pretty good.
Yeah,
muscle watch, man.
I don't know about all that. I don't know. It was just that we were coming at different angles, and Tice kind of just went blah, and fell all over himself, kind of stumbled all over his feet as he was kind of cut off from being able to catch the ball smoothly. But I mean, it was, to your point overall, though, really good help defense from Tyler. Like that's exactly what you're looking for. Like,
was it help defense, or was it was more like he saw the ball in the air and was trying to get it?
He was cutting to the he was cutting towards the hoop. I think he got past Bam, I would imagine, at that point. And then Tyler came over from the corner and was like, okay, nope, we're not going to let you get that smoothly.
What is that supposed to say? Ball in the air?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tyler saw it up in the air. He's like, I'm gonna go get this thing. And like I said, he caused that
cornerback. It was like a cornerback in football. He was just he was like, you're not going to catch it. I might not be able to get it, but you're not going to catch it, and I'll make sure of that. So
mission accomplished.
Really yes.
Yeah. So you've seen a lot of that kind of stuff with Tyler and Terry, I think, in these first 2. Well, Tyler for the 1 preseason game, Terry in both of them. So I've been very, I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say, that this thing can work. And look, the Charlotte Hornets. Like LaMelo Ball had a good game, but like that's not an awesome team. The Pelicans were sloppy in this one. I want to see them in a real in real stressful situations against a team that's kind of prepared to play and has some.
Tomorrow is a good test because how do they contend against the length and size of Victor Wembanyama and on the mismatches that he creates so obviously?
Right.
And then obviously San Antonio not expected I think most people would not pencil them in as a playoff team, although they'll probably win more than they did last year. And I think a lot of people might be lower on them than they expect. But I also want to see how Miami kind of handles somebody who creates such clear mismatches and who adjusts accordingly, because it's a big challenge, obviously, and that's no pun intended.
And Chris Paul, I mean, they've got Chris Paul there now.
Yeah.
He's not the Chris Paul that he used to be, but he's wily. He's still smart. He gets guys in tough spots, and he's going to run that pick and roll with Wembanyama, right? And so that tends to be where guys like Tyler Herro and Terry Rozier have struggled, right, in the past. And so, just putting them in that pick and roll blender, we'll see what it looks like. So that's a great point. Those guys did not play in the second half. Mostly, it was the young guys. The young guys played most of that second half. The Heat did get the win. Pelle Larsson with the game-winning free throws. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, and which one of these young players is making a case for more playing time. All that coming up next here on Locked On Heat. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Best way to support the show, leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube as the season gets going here. So, like I said, that starting five didn't play in the second half. Got a lot of minutes from those young guys. Got a lot of minutes from Pelle Larsson. We saw some Nasir Little, some Zion Pullen, Josh Christopher, Khalil Ware. And Pelle Larsson with those game-winning free throws. It wasn't the best Pelle Larsson game. He went 1 for 6 overall, but did go 4 for 4 from the line. Had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal. And like I said, I don't really care about the 1 for 6 stuff. Not in these preseason games. I want to see the process. I want to see how the floor game, especially with a rookie like Pelle. And I gotta tell you, man, these 2 games, I've been really impressed with this guy.
It's hard not to be when he brings that kind of constant effort, and like that's something tangible I can see. It doesn't always translate into anything statistical or productive, but you see it. He's
guy
throwing himself around. Yeah, he does, and that's why he's going to be such a good fit for Miami. I just, to your overall question going into the break about which of the young players is going to get more minutes, I've got to be honest with you. I don't see a lot of them. I think Spo is going to start off with a short rotation early on, and I think he's going to continue that throughout most of the season because none of them really found a way to stood out. Like there was the big game from Khalil in game 1 against Charlotte, albeit late in the game. He did not have such a good game against New Orleans. Again, in their backups, he was Miami's 4th center off the bench. I don't know that any of them stood up. I'm a little disheartened by seeing Josh Christopher just not be able to get it. Similar to what we said with Nico, I think he's probably putting a lot of pressure on himself on a 2-way, and he wants to make sure that he continues to build off what we saw in Summer League and everything else like that, but he just has not had it dialed up. He's making some sloppy plays. His shot isn't falling, and he just kind of gets into his own head a little bit like that. Pelle, at least, again, brings effort. Khalil, I don't think he was able to just use his body as smoothly as well as he did against Charlotte, so I don't know that he's going to continue to get playing time. I mean, I guess if there's a silver lining to this dark cloud of Miami's young core group there, it might be Drew Smith, and I have a really hard time saying that. But, I mean, you pointed out that he had some decent assist numbers, but he might have been the best of a bad bunch.
Wow. So you were pretty down on it.
I am.
They won the game.
Yeah, after giving up an 18-point lead.
yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true. Look, Drew Smith, his utility on this team is being a steady hand, maybe, is 5 assists to 1 turnover. Now, he's not every assist is created equal, right? Some of them are just, hey, you're the one that brought the ball up and you passed it to somebody and they made a shot. Other times you have something more of like what Jimmy Butler and Terry Rozier and Tyler Herro even were doing in this game, where they're driving and kicking, creating advantages, putting the defense in a tough position and taking advantage of those tough positions. Drew Smith doesn't do that very much. He also doesn't do the bad stuff either. So the best thing about Drew Smith is not necessarily what he does. It's almost like what he doesn't do, which is turn the ball over and make really bad mistakes. Defensively, I think the coaching staff is pretty high on Drew Smith. So, yeah, he played 16 and a half minutes in this game, 1 for 4, had 4 points, 5 assists, and one turnover. So those numbers are pretty good. But to go back to Pelle and Christopher and some of these other guys that people are more intrigued by, the Khalil Ware, I think we understand now what the expectation should be from him, right? We got, ever since Summer League, people talking to us about, hey, like, should they start Khalil? Like, can you
Yeah.
play him and Bam together? All these things. And we cautioned everybody the entire time, like, hey man, don't be like, don't take what happened last year with Jaime for granted. Don't assume that that's going to be what's happening here. Like, Jaime was an exception, not the rule. It takes a while for rookies to get involved in the Miami Heat program, right? Nico barely played. Now he had some back injuries and stuff like that as a rookie, but he wasn't a part of the planned rotation when he was a rookie. It takes a minute. Bam didn't play as a rookie. Like, these guys, it takes a while, especially at that center spot, which is hard to learn in the NBA, right? You've pointed this out a number of times. Sometimes in high school, college, just being the size that Pelle is enough. That'll get you to the league. Now you got to learn how to play. And everything that we're hearing out of from coaching staff, players, whoever you talk to on that Heat organization is, there's a ton of skill with Pelle, but he's not ready yet. And he's not ready yet. And that's okay. So he's going to get some of this. He played 15 minutes in this game. He's going to get that preseason run. We'll see him in the regular season. He's not going to be on the bench forever. He'll get his moments, right, where they're going to plug him in, foul trouble, injuries, whatever it's going to be. But it's about getting ready to that point, and he's not ready yet. Pelle Larsson, that's the thing that I want to get back to, is that hustle, that hard work. I think defensively, he actually has been much better than I expected for a rookie. I think there are going to be moments where he gets on the court. Now, I don't think he's going to be in the nightly rotation, but on a game like this where maybe Nico's in some foul trouble, when Duncan Robinson is in foul trouble and something like that, Jaime can get in foul trouble sometimes too. Like, I could see Pelle Larsson being like the 10th guy who just sort of jumps in as that swing piece. He can play a couple different spots. He's got the size where, okay, this guy's in foul trouble. We're dealing with this injury, another groin thing here, whatever it might be. Let's give Pelle Larsson some time. I think you look at the other options. Like, I don't know that Drew Smith is that guy. Nasir Little went 0 for 7 overall, 0 for 3 from three-point range. I don't think he's that guy. I'm just looking at what these options are, whether for a break glass in case of emergency. I think it's Pelle.
I think it's Pelle because we haven't seen Josh Richardson yet either. And I wonder how much Spo kind of just falls into default mode and says, I know what I'm getting out of Josh as he continues to work his way back. And like, his recovery has been, I think, slower than expected. Yeah. So I think, like, I don't know that Pelle would even be getting these minutes necessarily if Richardson was available. But at the same time, once Richardson does come back, yeah, he's not.
But he's not available, right?
So he, it's a tough spot because Richardson, obviously a proven vet and a guy with whom Spo has a close relationship, and specifically asked him to sign with the team, etc. And you want to be able to give him an opportunity as he nears what could be the potential end of his career. And Pelle, as a second-round pick, will probably have more opportunity down the road. At this point, I think, well, we haven't seen Josh, so it's unfair to even say which one is more ready to play and contribute regularly.
When Josh is healthy, he's in front of Pelle. I think right now, unless Pelle goes out and grabs that
if we
spot,
see the version
he's
of
Josh, have an
opportunity
here, right?
If we see the version of Josh that we saw before he got hurt last season, then yes.
Yeah.
If it's the version that started off the season where he was really uncomfortable and didn't know exactly where to contribute and was kind of playing backup point guard minutes and just doesn't really have a good clear fit or impact, it's kind of a wash. Because again, if it's Spo, and given Spo, look, there's two factors here for me. There's the respect factor that he has for Josh as a veteran, but he cannot ignore Pelle's flat out hustle. And I think that's also a factor that he appreciates greatly. So you're kind of weighing those two. And then it's just the quantifiable measurables of what they each do out in the court. And right now, Josh isn't doing anything. So he'll get his opportunity if and when he comes back healthy at some point soon. And once he does, well, he's got to go out there and really have a strong game. And then he can continue to show that. But for now,
Drew Smith is getting those backup point guard minutes right now. And that's another thing I'm waiting to see is, all right, is this just preseason where everybody's getting a little bit of run here? Because everybody is. And then in the regular season, does Eric Spoelstra kind of go back to maybe staggering Tyler Herro and Terry Rozier, where you just have one of them on the court, you don't necessarily need a backup point guard? And I think that could be the other option here, Drew Smith on that two-way contract. Or, when Josh Richardson comes back, does he become that backup point guard again? Does he assume that role again? And then you don't stagger Tyler Herro and Terry Rozier as much. So I think Eric Spoelstra is going to have some decisions to make here. I'm not even sure he knows what he's going to do with it yet. We still have a lot. It's only been 2 preseason games, but like we already talked about Tyler and Terry together. I think he's going to want to see that more. What?
Yeah, I think who looked good was Duncan Robinson. I think too.
Yeah, and then he's going to be licking his chops for Victor Wembanyama. That's his guy.
I don't know if he's putting Wembanyama in a blender or not, but at the same time, like
he did the move again.
If he did. if the point guard situation is so shaky, you might have to consider, benching or bringing off the bench one of the either Rozier or Hero, and then starting Duncan. I think just because he provides so much spacing, and then you have at least a solid backup guard. So if you
I
can,
don't know if you need to do that if you're staggering them. It's kind of the same thing.
yeah, I don't. I'm not trying to create controversy here or anything like that, but my thinking is just if you've got these two guys that are both capable of initiating offense and you're starting a lineup, and as good as they looked in yesterday's game, but the backup position is so lacking, you could bolster it by bringing Duncan into the starting lineup and then putting one of those guys to be your backup point guard. But I guess to your point, if you stagger them correctly, then it won't make that much of a difference. It's just you got to figure out something for that bench unit to be able to generate offense more smoothly.
I would imagine that that's going to be the case in the regular season. Is you'll have one of Tyler and Terry on the court at all times. We'll see what happens with Jimmy and Bam because those guys Eric Spoelstra has tended to keep one of those guys on the court at all times, and he's had to. I don't know if he's going to continue doing that. Maybe he will. I don't know. But if you've got at least one of Bam and Jimmy and one of Tyler and Terry, you're going to be able to generate offense. Like, we're not going to get these like full bench units, I don't think, during the regular season. That's not been Spo's. That's not what Spo does. Historically, that's not been the way he handles his rotation. So we will see what happens. We got a few more preseason games to get to this week. We'll have our recaps for you all throughout the week. But for now, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.